Alright, so I am back, and in today's video, we need to have a discussion about Geno Smith and his future with the Seattle Seahawks. Because despite still having a chance to make the playoffs, they need a little bit of help to get in. And in case you don't know what help they actually need, well, they need a win against the Arizona Cardinals, and then they need the Green Bay Packers to lose to the Chicago Bears. And I don't know about you, but I don't really love those odds. And of course, he is not the only person to blame, but when you are the starting quarterback for an NFL team, it is going to be questioned every single day of whether or not you should keep your job. So in today's video, I want to answer that question. Should Geno Smith keep his job? So without further ado, let's hop right into it. And I think the best way to start this video off is by talking about Geno Smith's performance this year. Because this year he has a completion percentage of 65.2, he has 3,435 passing yards, 18 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. And when you compare those stats to what he put up last year, which was sort of the benchmark for his progress in this year, last year he had 69.8% of his passes completed with 4,282 passing yards, 30 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. And I know it's unfair to compare this season to last season because he has missed some time this year, but I think even if he had played a couple games this year that he missed, I still think his numbers would be significantly down from last year. And while I still think Geno Smith is still a top 20 quarterback in the NFL, it is no denying that this team needs to have a top 10 quarterback to win the Super Bowl. Because in my opinion, I feel like this Seahawks roster has enough talent to make a deep run in the playoffs, and currently speaking, with Geno Smith and what they have showcased, I don't think they're going to make it that far. At the end of the day, this is an offense that ranks 17th in points per game, 20th in yards per game, and 23rd in touchdowns per game, which for me doesn't really show signs of being a very good offense. And I get it, the defense is absolutely outrageously bad, especially when it comes to run defense, but I'm not judging Geno Smith on necessarily the success of the team, rather the success of the offense. And as I said earlier, I think with the potential this team has, if this offense was ranked in the top 5, they could definitely make that deep run, even if the defense was very bad. I mean, heck, look at the rest of the NFC. You take away Dallas, San Francisco, and Detroit, and even with Detroit, I'm kind of pulling some strings there. How many teams are genuinely contending for the Super Bowl this year? Like, do we expect the Philadelphia Eagles to fix all their problems and win a championship this year? Well, I don't. Like, the LA Rams have the pieces, but can they put it together with all these young guys? Maybe. And then you're looking at teams like Green Bay and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which I don't think have a chance, but I do think they could potentially make some noise in the playoffs. So had the Seattle Seahawks had at least a decent to good offense, I still think this team could have made that run. Now, that wouldn't have fixed all the problems. This is still an offense that has no idea what it wants to be. Some games it looks like it wants to be a rushing offense, and then other games it just passes the ball 30 times. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the defense is pretty bad. But the reason why I'm bringing all this up is that I think this team can take that next step if they have the quarterback to get them there. And again, I'm going to repeat this about 50 times, Geno Smith is not the core issue for the Seahawks team, but I do feel like he's not necessarily the solution for this team. Whereas I think some of these rookie quarterbacks could come in and be that solution. So here's what I'm suggesting. I think this Seahawks team has a couple options. I think either A, they keep Geno Smith and rock with him. B, they go out there in the first round and take a quarterback to replace Geno Smith. C, they go out there and sign Russell Wilson and shock the world. Or D, they keep Geno Smith and draft a quarterback in the second or third round to develop behind him. So I think those are the four most likely scenarios this team is going to go down next year. If you're to ask me which one I think the Seahawks will go down, I think it's more than likely they're just going to stick with Geno Smith. Because for me, speaking personally, I don't think this is a franchise that is really quick to make quick decisions. They come off more to be kind of that old school style of kind of waiting to see how it plays out. And I think they have the mentality that it's harder to replace quarterbacks than a lot of people think it is. And while I completely agree, I do think that this is a draft class that you can find that replacement later in the draft, especially with what pick they might potentially have. Or hell, if they do decide to trade up, I definitely do think the value to get a quarterback with the 10th to 12th spot is definitely still there. So I think the excuse of not going out there because they don't have the draft capital is kind of a lame excuse. I do think that Geno Smith has just done enough to keep this franchise happy. And while the fans might disagree and while I might disagree, I don't necessarily know if the front office and the head coach disagree. And the reason why I say that is we saw how long they wanted to stick with guys like Russell Wilson. Listen, Russell Wilson was still great with the Seattle Seahawks late into his career, but it was very obvious that they were never going to win the NFC with him. Yet they kept him around and they wanted to keep him for as long as possible. And while of course that did work out because you would end up getting a ton of draft capital from the Denver Broncos, it still does keep my point that I'm trying to make very true. This is an organization that typically likes to stay loyal to their players, or at least their impact players, mainly at the quarterback position. And again, I go back to it, I do think that point was proven when they kept Russell Wilson for all these years. So I think the likelihood of them actually replacing Geno Smith is very unlikely. Again, that's not necessarily my decision or what I think they should do, I just think that is what is more than likely going to happen. As for what I would like to do, I would like them to go out there and draft a quarterback. And I have 3 specific names that are going to be going into this year's draft who I think would be great for this system. And even if they do change the system with some coaching changes, I still think they would fit into basically whatever system is out there. And the first quarterback of the 3 is Jaden Daniels. Now I understand that Jaden Daniels is by most people's account the 3rd best quarterback in this year's draft. I still do think there's a possibility that he could fall to their pick, and even if they don't fall there, I definitely could see Seattle potentially trading up to get him. Jaden Daniels has a very good style. He can throw the ball with anticipation, good accuracy, of course he has the mobility. His fallbacks are really his pocket presence, his lack of footwork, and sometimes his accuracy accuracy on deep balls. Whereas I think you see a guy like Michael Penix and Bo Nix, who we might potentially be talking about here in a little bit, who have those traits but don't necessarily have all the traits that he has. And I think culturally speaking, I think Jayden Daniels would be a great fit down there. Obviously, he's mainly been sticking south, being at Arizona State and then LSU, but I do think any LSU quarterback could definitely make the translation to a team like Seattle. So me personally, I think all the traits are there of what a quarterback would look like in Seattle. And the nice thing is this, I don't necessarily know if you have to have Jayden Daniels start right away. Sure, he is a little bit of an older rookie quarterback, but if you do want to keep Geno Smith around to train this guy to become the future franchise quarterback for Seattle, I definitely do think that is still within the books to happen. The second guy also kind of follows suit in a lot of ways with what I said about Jayden Daniels, and that is of course Bo Nix. And I think the best thing about Bo Nix is that he is kind of similar to what Geno Smith is current day. And again, he is one of those older quarterbacks from this draft, but I still think he has the potential to continue to grow into what he can be. Bo Nix also has a good arm, he has a good capability to scramble and make plays. I think his pocket presence is very underrated, and I think his footwork is also very solid. Does he make the occasional boneheaded play? 100%. But I think his time at Oregon with Dan Lanning definitely did teach him a lot. I think the time when he came in to when he left, he got so much better. So that tells me a couple of things. I think this is a coachable player who can definitely continue to grow and become a better player in the NFL. So sure, he's one of those older quarterbacks from this year's draft. I still think his potential still hasn't been tapped. And similar to Jayden Daniels, I still think that his cultural fit would be even better, honestly, than Jayden Daniels with a team like the Seattle Seahawks. I guarantee you there'd be a ton of Seattle Seahawks fans who would be absolutely ecstatic to have him on the roster. And the last of the three options I have is, of course, Michael Penix Jr. If you're looking for a guy with a cannon of an arm, good reflexes in the pocket, decent footwork, and a good throwing motion, and somebody who absolutely lit up every single defense he faced, then I think Michael Penix is your guy. Does he have drawbacks? 1000%. This is a guy who doesn't necessarily have the greatest mobility. He obviously did have a couple torn ACLs. I would also say I'd want to see him learn a little bit more of how to read defenses, especially when it comes down to the NFL time. And yet again, similar to a guy like Jayden Daniels and Bo Nix, this is obviously an older quarterback. Older as in, I think he's like 24 years old. So you're not dealing with the 21-year-old prospect, you're dealing with a guy who is a little bit more seasoned than those guys. And I think for Seahawks fans, that's honestly a good thing. You're going to be getting a already established, savvy quarterback who still has room to grow. And that applies to all the quarterbacks I just talked about, but I think it honestly applies even more with Michael Penix Jr. Because I think of the three quarterbacks I talked about, I think that he has the best chance to be a legitimately phenomenal quarterback. That's no spite at Jayden Daniels and Bo Nix. I just think from what I saw in that playoff game against Texas, he has that potential to be a guy like Joe Burrow. And no, I'm not starting the Michael Penix is the next Joe Burrow train, but what I am saying is if you're looking for a guy who has the potential to be absolutely phenomenal in the NFL, I do think that he is the guy. And potentially, this could be fortunate for a team like Seattle because I do think that he is currently ranked on most people's mock boards the fourth, maybe the fifth best quarterback in this year's draft. So the possibility of him potentially falling to you got even better. Now with that said, he is absolutely climbing up draft boards right now because of his recent performances. So again, I do think this team is going to have to potentially trade up to get him, but he's not going to go in the top 5 picks unless he has an absolutely crazy offseason. So if you are Seattle, this would be a cost-efficient guy you could potentially get. So those are the three options that I have for this team. Again, I do think this team is going to stick with Geno Smith, but I do think if they decide to get a quarterback in this year's draft, then I think it is more than likely that they're going to keep Geno Smith to train these young guys to be the quarterback, probably not next year, but maybe the year after that, or maybe sometime next year. I do think if they do decide to take one of these quarterbacks that basically instantly upgrades this offense, because if these quarterbacks are what I think they are, then I definitely do think they could potentially be upgrades over a guy like Geno Smith. And I also do want to mention this, I talked about it a couple times with each of the prospects, but all three of those guys are older, more seasoned players. And while they haven't faced NFL defenses, they have faced some pretty stiff competition in the college football level. So while I don't expect them to go out there and be like CJ Stroud was his rookie year, I also wouldn't be shocked if they are slightly better than what the average rookie is. You look at how Will Levis and Bryce Young struggled their rookie year, I don't really expect guys like Jayden Daniels, Bo Nix, or Michael Penix Jr. to struggle like them. Now that of course does come with a bit of a caveat that it depends on what system they get put into, but any of those three guys who get put into Seattle's system with what they already have, I think they'd be in a great spot to be very good for many years to come. And I think if you were to ask any of those three quarterbacks if they would mind to play with the Seattle Seahawks, I think all three of them would be very happy to play for them. So those are your options, Seattle. Which one do you take? I don't have the answers to that. Again, I think they're going to stick with Geno Smith and play that out and see how that goes. But I think if they were wise, they would realize that this is the year to get a quarterback because of how deep this draft class really is. But Seattle Seahawks and NFL fans, let me know in the comment section below what you guys think the Seattle Seahawks team should do. Should they get their franchise quarterback, or do they already have their franchise quarterback in Geno Smith? And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button because that helps me out a ton. At the end of the day, we are on the road to 1,000 subscribers and we are super close, so make sure to hit that subscribe button if you're not already subscribed. But I love you guys. Peace.